So if you haven't done your quiz, it's a good time to try it. If you're not doing a quiz, maybe you can start thinking of all the things you're going to forget about in 2 minutes. Just give them some airtime in your head. See them for what they are and slowly but surely push them out of the room, please. Hi. Can someone help Rachel?
You walk the back, so come in this way. Either they come through.
Can I plug you here for a second
while
sure. That rolls in?
No problem. Maybe put it on that side. I think it's really distracting to have it over there.
Just write that. No, it's good. Gotcha. It's there. Just write that. The Tibetan. Smells good.
Which neck is it?
Huh?
Which neck is it?
Yeah. So, before we start, don't forget that at the beginning of class, I'm inviting you each week to step into that part of you that is the potential enlightened self, that thing that you're going to become. You get a chance to play with that being when you come in here and you connect with that you as a future enlightened being. Give yourself that space, and to do that you've got to piss off the other one. You got to say get outside for a second. And then as you step into that being, think how close you are to actually achieving the goals that we've been talking about. What is it to be an enlightened being? And if you don't know, if you can sense what it is to whatever degree you can, then as we do this thing, beg your teachers to flood you with realizations, but see them coming. And then as we do the other thing, think that there is something about refuge in those three objects that we've been studying about that has the capacity to completely offer refuge, true refuge, not temporary refuge. So whatever it is for you, wherever you are at, allow yourself the space to step into that and then move forward. And it might sound repetitive, and that's the part I can't do for you. You have to, for yourself, find the energy to step into that. So I'm asking you today in particular, because we're beginning the teachings on emptiness, that somehow in this stuff is the seed for you to completely unravel your world into a magnificent, unsurpassed, ultimate, no suffering for you and everybody around you. Complete and utter bliss. So if there is that in the information that we're going to cover today, it's going to be very different for each one of you. And so you have to be a little bit selfish, if you like. Allow yourself the space to say, what is it for me? How does it relate to me? What are my questions? What are my concerns? What are my realizations? What am I stepping into for you? So I'm going to ask that we subdue the class today somewhat and just really hone into that part of you, that mind of yours that is heading in that beautiful direction. Is that vague enough for everyone? Good. I wish I hadn't worn tight jeans today. Bloody hipsters. Okay.
Chidan Zoki Chognan
Chu Bardu Lakmi Gyapsu Chi Naki Chunyen Ki Pe Sonam Ki Rola Banjir Sangye Drupa Sho. So take a comfortable seated position. We're going to do a meditation just to get our minds into that space. Just settle into your seat. Make a commitment to not move, to discard the attachment to your body, and begin focusing inward by placing your mind on your breath as it enters and exits your nostrils. With each inhale, begin to transform the inside of your body until everything becomes translucent after a few breaths. And the inside of your body, just inside your skin, is an infinite blue sky. Now picture yourself in the most isolated, perfect space for meditation, anywhere you imagine. It could be a secret cave, it could be a room high in the mountains, it could be on top of a temple deep in the forest. But it's just you, and the space around you is transformed into the most magnificent space, so conducive for the deepest realizations. You are safe there. It is the perfect place of your creation. And you sense something inside of you, a wish to understand reality beyond what you've ever wished for. It grows inside you with unbearable beauty. And as it does, in front of you appears your most perfect teacher in whatever form you need to answer that wish. watch as they become real and moving in front of you. You can see their chests moving up and down with their breath in sync with yours. Begin to scan them, see their outside and their inside. Understand that you can see their minds, you can see their realizations. You can see that they hold every answer without exception to your wish. And that they're there for you, loving you. Wanting to share with you their knowledge. So then a special reverence comes over you and you want to offer them something of beauty. Just spontaneously, you burst a gift out for them. Either in your mind, a memory of a magnificent moment, a creation of your own. Something that pleases every sense of theirs. And you see them filled with happiness. You wish to give them everything. So you think of one quality that they have, one quality they possess that you know you'll be able to get in the next week or so, because you're that close. And you revere that in them. They can see how it will be part of you soon. And so you're filled with gratitude. And then you see inside of you some part of your mind that has a tiny shade of doubt or block. Something in your conscience that prevents you from opening up. Something that preoccupies your mind at the most subtle form. And you scan and you think back in the last day or so at a habit that keeps occurring in your life that causes some unhappiness in the world, in your world. And traps you into behaving or thinking in a certain way. So you scan for that in your memory. And you stop at a specific instant. And you decide to step into it and relive it for the sake of understanding how you can stop it. And so you walk through the steps that got you to that moment in slow motion in front of your perfect teacher, with them watching, seeing your motivation, seeing your interaction. And at the point where you see shifting from regular state of mind into that negative state of mind where you did that act of whatever it is, whether it be jealousy or anger or hatred or greed. And at that moment, you build a deep regret in your heart, realizing that if you had clarity, you would have stopped it. And that wish grows in you with some power to overpower it next time. And so you make a commitment to remember that next time you're close to that habit, you will make efforts to stop it so you don't have to regret it or cause some hurt in the world. And something about that feels clean, feels honest. And that part of your mind that was previously occupied is now freed. And so you scan now your mind for the nicest virtue, the seeds for goodness that you've imbued your mind with over the last day or so, in front of your perfect teacher, the being that has the keys. And you look for the last time when you did some goodness and beautiful virtue in the world. Where you had a deep understanding of something, where you acted in a correct way towards something that would have prompted you to be angry, or where you loved somebody, where you removed your self-centeredness. So you scan your mind to the most perfect time. Then you decide to step back into the moment and really catch the new pattern emerging, where you create a perfect world with acts of virtue like that. And you watch yourself doing the goodness and you fill your heart with happiness. A deep joy grows in your heart and you could see it mirrored in the teacher in front of you. Just think through that space again and allow your heart to be happy. What's that happiness feel like? And then bring your mind to all the people in the world that are doing some goodness as well, with wisdom, and share that happiness for them. And somehow you feel up and inspired. So you look at your teacher and you ask them deep from your heart to please teach you everything you need and to always stay close. They say they will. And they rise above your head facing the same direction you are and begin to shrink down to the size of a thumb. And they sit at the crown of your head. now you get a third person's perspective of you sitting there in this magnificent space that you've created. You see a perfect teacher, an apparition of them just at the crown of your head, showering you with wisdom. And you see inside of that being sitting there how close they are to coming to some realizations of how they exist in the world. You see inside of them the true wish to understand, and you see inside of them how much they wish to help others understand so they'd be free from suffering. And so you dive into the heart of that being that is you. Feel the potential for wisdom from the heart. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thanks for coming, everyone. Let's have a look. We're talking about refuge, and now we're talking about the proof of emptiness and gacha in the next two classes. Before we get there, somebody tell me what you've learned in the last 6 classes. And I just want something you've actually applied.
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Really?
Nothing.
No, you learned nothing?
That's where I come from.
What do you mean?
Nothing, just the nothingness. A lot of it.
You mean emptiness?
Emptiness.
Emptiness, okay. Let's go there tomorrow, next week. But today, let's go why emptiness. Emptiness doesn't mean nothingness. I mean, it's a nothingness of type that we'll talk. There's a collection of works called The Perfection of Wisdom, where you're going to get all your information on what were the 3 things that we finished last class with? What you need to get to nirvana. Do you remember that? The methods for achieving nirvana. They're the 3 principal parts. That's the first of the 3 principal parts. It's good because it's a list of 3 and I'm happy you know it. If you're going to achieve nirvana, you're going to need the first of all, you're going to need
Training.
Which training? Which is the first?
The realization of emptiness. Sea level.
The mastery of the extraordinary training on wisdom. Yeah, which is exactly what you said. But it's which of the 3 trainings? It's the third of the 3 trainings. What's the next thing you need?
Concentration.
The mastery of the first 2 of the 3, which are?
Morality and concentration.
Excellent. Okay. So if you figure the extraordinary training on wisdom, if you figure that out, and then if you have those other 2 trainings, which is morality and concentration, which means what? Practically, like for you in the bus, for you on the subway.
Good behavior and treating others well.
Yeah. So you look at your world, the world you're in, and you behave in that world with some morality. Yeah? And but you understand why. You see why the first is the extraordinary training on wisdom, is you need to understand why morality works. And then you've got to meditate and concentrate and do that stuff. If you want to achieve a state of nirvana, you need to understand how this world is existing. Yeah? Then you need to behave in a certain way, which we're calling morality. You need to understand why that works. And then you perfect, or you work through concentration, you practice meditation, so in that state you get, what's the third thing you need for nirvana?
Getting used to it.
Getting used to it, right? Getting used to what? What's it?
Getting used to understanding the emptiness so that you can experience it.
It's actually the
DPE.
It's the DPE. No, it's getting used to the DPE. Yeah. So it's the, which lam is it? The one after the path of seeing, the path of
Habituation.
Habituation. Yeah. So if you figure out, they're saying you need three methods for achieving nirvana. Become a master at the extraordinary training on wisdom, to really know your stuff around emptiness. Become ensure that is imbued with concentration and morality, yeah, because you're causing certain things to happen, and then become extremely familiar with the realization of it, yeah, after using emptiness to habituate that. Did I cover last week the 4 results of a Buddhist path? Or is that something I forgot to do and was in the test? Let's see. What's a foe destroyer?
The last thing we covered was the 3 requirements to share that.
Okay. So, there's this thing called the 4 results of the Buddhist path, and I'll give you these names, and we'll talk about them and we've talked about them to some degree. Yeah. The first of the results is that you become a stream enterer. A stream enterer. And the reason, are you sure we can cover this? It sounds very familiar in my head. Okay.
Say it again, stream.
Stream enterer. See, in Tibet, there's lots of streams and rivers, and there's no bridges. Yeah. So people have to figure out what's the best way to cross that stream. Yeah. So I guess that's why they use this word for a stream enterer, and a person, a being that's entered a certain stream. Okay, and then off they go in the stream. What does that mean? So this is the result of a Buddhist path. So if you do a Buddhist path, you're going to end up here, and you might be labeled a stream enterer. Yeah, that's instead of your name, you will be called. No, I'm making that up. Anyone know what a stream enterer is?
You're getting it very quickly, and you're going very quickly along the path.
That's good, because you will be getting it very quickly after something happens to you, and then you enter this stream. What's this stream, and what are we entering?
Natural flow, please.
It's like a mind stream.
Like
think it's after you've seen
collective consciousness.
Oh, cool. No, I'm
It's like once that trigger clicks in your mind,
what trigger?
the understanding
What understanding?
of emptiness.
Beautiful. What kind of understanding of emptiness? Because remember, we could have two. You can have it.
Experience of emptiness.
Wow, I love your brain. Yeah.
So once you have it, then like a stream enter is gonna be like, this is a thought, I guess. Like once you get that, or once you understand it and once you have an experience of it, you just
Okay, so we're talking about the path of seeing. Yeah. Direct perception of emptiness. DPE. Thank you. Once that happens, you become certain things happen to you. Yeah? You become an Arya. Yeah? Like Arya Avalokiteshvara. What else happens to you?
Oh, it's 4 Arya truths.
That's immediately coming off the direct perception of emptiness. Yeah? That can happen. Yeah? You hit which bodhisattva bhumi, do you know? Remember we talked a little bit about the bhumis? For those of you who have been studying separately. Once you see emptiness directly, automatically you're labeled as reaching which of the bodhisattva bhumis? There are 10 bhumis? This was depressing for me. No, you hit the first bodhisattva bhumi. And I'm like, the first? But we worked this hard. Anyway, you get rid of what?
Things are no longer self-existent. They still force themselves.
That's true. And so
Do you get rid of ignorance?
you don't get rid. Let's keep that for. You get rid of doubt. Yeah, you get rid of doubt because you had a direct experience of reality. So you get rid of a doubt that we all have in our path until we reach that spot.
Are we still talking about the stream enter?
Yep.
Okay.
Cool. If you do according to this, if you do according to this, you haven't had a direct perception of emptiness. That's it. If you have a doubt, then you have not had that experience. That's a good marker to know where you're at.
If you haven't doubted about what?
Good. Where things come from and whether this path exists and whether Buddhas exist and whether you'll become a Buddha, and a whole bunch of things cease after that moment. So upon seeing emptiness directly, they say that the doubt on the path, the doubt that Buddhas exist, that enlightenment is possible, that reality has been lying to you, that you've been misconceiving the world, all those things, like all this stuff, all the doubts we have nowadays, is true, like, oh, you know, what's the fourth bhumi? Yeah, all that stuff, you have a direct perception of how things function, and no amount of any of the 7 billion beings on the planet saying, buy my Bible, yeah, swirl, or draw a tanka of a Buddha, or that will get you, or drink this elixir, and if you get aspirin, that will work. Get 3 girlfriends and you'll be happier than me because I've got one. You know, anybody that tries to tell you how things function that don't coincide with the direct experience that you've had about reality, yeah, those things that you're now questioning about, maybe if I try that, maybe if I try that doubt, gone.
If that's so, then why would habituation be a process?
Beautiful, because you still got the seeds, the crappy seeds of things in your mind stream that you've sown under the influence of ignorance, the thing that, under the influence of not understanding reality. So you've got broken seeds, if you like, seeds that are producing suffering, yeah, that are still in the storehouse of your mind's continuum, and they're going to be there. So that's why your answer was right. You're still, after you come out of the direct perception of emptiness and you go through the, what was it? We gave it a code, or which was called the individual analysis, right? Do you remember that? Yeah, what's the individual analysis? Because directly after the perception of emptiness, the individual analysis are 4, which are?
4 Arya truths.
4 Arya truths. You actually have an experience of these 4 Arya truths, like what Buddha had after he came out from under the Bodhi tree, before he went out and started teaching. He came to these things and then he taught them. What are these things? You know, you see, after you come out of the direct perception of emptiness, your mind stream starts to shift things and see things completely different. And the first realization you have within a few hours after that experience is that the truth that things are suffering. The things are suffering. And so you might look at your body, for example, and you might know that it is doomed. It was produced by impure causes. It's doomed. It's suffering. you know why it's suffering. The second of the Ariel truths. You see the causes of that suffering, that this body must deteriorate and turn to crap. And if you don't give it enough time, something else will happen to it. You will see that. You will have a direct understanding of that. That's why they call it Ariel truths, because an Arya, a being that has seen emptiness directly, sees it as a truth. Yeah. Then you see that the causes of that, of anything that's deteriorating and suffering, was caused by nothing else but by your actions of a misunderstood world. You see the real causes of this crappy existence that we're all desperately trying to overcome. So you have that as a realization. And what's the third of the Ariel truths?
So there's a way out.
So there's a way out. There's a path. Yeah? And so you might see yourself as an enlightened being after having seen emptiness directly, realizing that things are suffering. You see where they come from, and then you know that there's a way out. You've seen it without a doubt now, and then you also have a perception of what it will take to get there. You say, here I am in my continuum of my existence. I've just hit the golden diamond moment. Ka-ching. I wonder if at that time you might go, I have a song that I play when that I've got ready that I'm going to play after I see emptiness directly. Where I'm going to celebrate. It's called Shangri-La, and it's like a bit 1970s. So if you can imagine me with afro hair, and rollerblades and tight shorts. You probably didn't need that. That's
Actually, haven't we've been all born before, and I think that we all have pretty good karma in order to be so involved in our Dharma practices.
or lucky.
Or well, whatever. But if we have a very good understanding intellectually of what dependent arising is and empty is, it just doesn't seem, I mean, no matter how much I might understand, and no matter how much I might be able to recite text, or I know what they mean, it doesn't, that little thing doesn't happen. Is that because I live in the city and you don't have time to disappear?
No, it's not because you live in the city. No.
I mean, it's funny, but I don't see how, if we haven't studied this somewhere before in our lives, that you can just pick, because even when you're younger, when you're 14 or 15 or 20, if somebody involves you in all these things, they're not going to be that much.
Well, it depends. I mean, you could be a 13 or 14 or 9-year-old in a Tibetan monastery, and then you go kaping. I mean, I've seen 9-year-old kids that have realizations that I go, oh, I don't know that.
Wow.
And so it's beautiful that you asked that question today, because we're going to find out where do things come from, So, and how are we perceiving things anyway? Why do we? I mean, you're thinking that if we moved out of the city, maybe that will help me.
I'm thinking that why is it at certain times you have a better understanding of something than at other times? Of course, it's because those distractions are no longer distractions for you, and you've sort of chosen what you're really going to follow in your life.
Do you really? Or did you put the courses in place at some previous time? So we'll talk about karma towards the end of it, and karma's got a bunch to do with that. That's what I said today, because we're going to talk about this very special topic. For each one of us, this is a very different experience, and that experience can only come from you. I mean, I'm saying the same words, but because this is one of the highest things that we can discuss, because you can ultimately unravel a shitty existence into a blissful existence. If there is such a thing, and we're about to discuss it, and you're about to perceive it and conceive of it, and plant the seeds for it to ripen later, then and it's different for every one of you, then you need to take care of your seeds, whatever they are. Yeah? So let me go through, and then we might get to it. Where was I? We're on the third Ariel truth as a review on the previous class. Previous to previous. After the direct perception of emptiness, you realize that things are suffering, you realize the causes of suffering, you realize that suffering has an end, and then you see the steps that it will get you there. And, they say for some people it's up to 7 lifetimes, and you see in detail each one of your faces, what that looks like, etc., etc. Why are we talking about that? Because once you've had that experience, you are then called a stream enterer. You enter the stream, means you're out of the cycle of suffering. Yeah? So you've entered that stream, which means if you've seen the wheel of life, you're definitely going to be out of samsara. You're on the way out. The next of the 4 results of the Buddhist path is called a once returner. It's like a boomerang. So what would a once returner be if a stream enterer is a being who has seen emptiness directly and has,
Would a once returner be someone who would come back to help others achieve this?
They have one more life in the desire realm. Okay? This is the desire realm. How many realms do we have? 6 realms within the desire realm.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. So, and that means it's likely that you're going to be some kind of special being, but after you've seen emptiness directly, sometime after you're a stream enterer, you could be a once returner, and that means you're in the desire realm just one more time.
And this is the desire realm, we're in the desire realm?
Yep. Why is it called the desire realm? I'm glad you asked, because we just want food and sex. Yeah. We and the dogs and the cats and everyone stuck in here. Try not to think about food and sex for the next 10 seconds. The next result is a non-returner. I feel like I'm talking about Tina Turner for some reason. A person who has gone, who has had the direct perception of emptiness, who is higher than a stream enterer and a once returner. What does that mean? It's not a Buddha. Huh?
They will not take return.
Yes.
On the last one, the non-return. Are we doing the non-returner now?
We're doing the non-returner. Yeah.
If the non-returner is not in any of the desire realms, which would the demigod and the god, even in the god realms, where does it exist?
No, the non-returner says not in the desire realms. It could be in the form or formless realm.
Could you explain that a little bit to me? Because it's not the god realm. It's not in the highest of the god realms.
Yeah. I can't at the moment. How's that? Yep.
Okay.
So, and lastly, the result.
Sorry to interrupt you, but then we agree that the non-returner is basically a mind that doesn't have to return to the desired realm.
Let's say a being, that has eliminated all the mental afflictions, and will never need to return to another birth in the desired realm.
Does that mean when they die they exit the wheel?
That means they're not in the wheel.
They're already not in the wheel.
Yeah, I don't know if they die.
They're in the able body.
Mm-hmm.
But they could choose to return to the desire realm voluntarily if they wanted to.
Is the Buddha that appeared here born here? So is a Buddha? Is Manjushri here when he's here? Did he get born here? He's an emanation. So where is he? If he's emanating, where is he emanating from? Hmm?
Well, the Buddha is omniscience, right? So he's everywhere. Or he can be everywhere if he wants.
But where is he from which he emanates?
When you become a Buddha, you see it.
Hmm? Say that again.
When you become a Buddha, you see it. As soon as you...
Doesn't it pop in his bodies and seem to help all the beings somehow? Like they become angels.
I want you to think about it. Yeah? Please. Good?
I think it's the difference between the Dharmakaya and the Rupakaya. One's a manifestation.
Manifestation, and the other one
the
is...
other one is...
Yeah, yeah. So we covered this a little bit on ACI 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want it to be the subject of the class. I just want to give you the description of those 4 results of a Buddhist path, so we could move to the next class. But it's a good topic. We covered it a little bit. I think in ACI 1 we covered it in terms of the bodies of the Buddha, and we'll get to cover it again. But today, so that's the review from last class. But today we're going to talk about Gacha. Say Gacha.
Gacha.
And before we talk about emptiness, we have to talk about this thing called Gacha. Gacha means, Gak means deny or refute, and Ja means object or object to be. So it's the object we refute or deny. It's the thing we deny. And if you remember when we did the schools, remember we did that graph of the schools, and I think it was in ACI 1 where we did the, do you remember all those 4 schools? 4 views? No? Remember the drawing? It's okay, we'll review it over and over and over. But what I want to say here is that if you're going to study this subject, from what I understand, in Tibetan monasteries, some people will go out and, before getting into this subject, they'll go out and do a whole bunch of kewa, I think it's kewa, virtue, yeah? They'll go and either do mantras or lock themselves up in a cave or do prayers for a long time, because the closer you get to trying to understand something ultimate, the more that you're coming up against the habituation of an entire string of infinity, which is your mind. And so you're about to break that thing just by conceiving of these things. And so you want to make sure your motivation is extremely pure. You want to make sure that you can really connect it to something useful, like bodhicitta or something like that. And so pay attention to your mind as we talk about the Gacha. The Gacha is the object we deny. And it's the first thing that you need to cover to understand before we can go into the proofs of emptiness. It's like saying, if you don't know what a vase full of flowers looks like, if you don't know what this thing is, how could you deny its existence? So if you didn't know what a vase full of flowers looked like, and I said, let's find out this Gacha thing about the vase full of flowers, yeah? You wouldn't know what a vase full of flowers looks like, so you don't know that it doesn't exist. Does that make sense? Yeah, you're going to get a bunch of double negatives today, and you're going to have to deal with that in your heads. So in order to identify the thing that does not exist, the thing that all Buddhists deny, yeah, the thing that could never exist at all, you must try and find out what that non-existent thing is. What is that thing that all Buddhists deny? We talked last week about the self. Yeah? Okay. So what is it? The Gacha is a self-existent thing, a thing that exists. You're going to hear all these things. A thing that exists by itself, a thing with a self-nature, a thing with a self, a thing from its own side. And when you try and analyze how you perceive the world, how you experience the world, how you are forced to experience the world, and then you try and break down these things that I've just said, self, self-nature, from its own side, etc., you'll begin to catch the Gacha. Yeah? So, when we speak of emptiness, the Gacha is that thing that emptiness is empty of. It hasn't got that thing.
The object.
It hasn't got that thing that it's empty of. Yeah? It's funny language.
Say that one more time. Gotcha is the thing that.
Gacha is the thing that isn't in the emptiness. How's that? Yeah? So Gacha, the thing that can never exist, that does not exist, is the thing you realize that could never have existed at all when you realize emptiness. Yeah? This is self-existent. Yeah, things existing from their own side with self-nature.
Only two things are self-existing.
Why are we doing
Why are we doing
this?
this?
Like food like that.
Yeah. It's two reasons. It's tradition. It's been laid down by beings that have had these experiences, so there must be.
Why are we doing double negative? Like you're just saying.
There's no other way to get to it, though.
Yeah.
There's no other way to get to it. You know, how do you get to something that's beyond words?
No, but you're saying it's empty. So that's what you're saying by saying this is a thing that has self-existent, and then when you get to emptiness, you realize this thing does not exist. You're just saying that things are empty.
Yes. But there are levels of understanding of that, and there are levels of experience of that, that if you listen, you might get another layer in your understanding of it. And it's hard, and like Peter said,
It just seems very cerebral to me. It's just like
Yeah.
playing with the word.
yeah, that's funny. That's excellent. Actually, I'm glad you said that, because I asked, why would you go and do lots of mantras and all this stuff? Yeah, I'm going to give you the empty answer. At some point, these words might seem like just a language play. These words could seem, what's the word? When you just muck around with words, what? Semantics. Yeah, it could just mean semantics. Yeah, and for other people, these very same words are
But you can experience it. You can experience it.
Yeah, I know. So where does that come from? That somebody has a cerebral experience of these words and someone has a meaningful experience of words. Where does that come from? And that's why people go out and try and clean up their minds and do some virtue and generate some virtue so they could hear the empty words filled with meaning. Yeah? Even the double meanings. That's just my understanding and experience of these things. You plant the right seeds in your mental consciousness, and then these words would, instead of being semantics, would be something special. So I'm asking, please listen with a pure mind and a pure heart, and be aware that you might come to those things. It just doesn't make sense. Just let that pass and look further. Okay? I'm going to cover a bunch of things today. So, in the Bodhisattva's way of life, they said, until you can find what you thought was there, you can never grasp how it cannot exist. Yep. Until you can find what you thought was there, you can never grasp how it cannot exist. Sorry for the double negative, it's just the way it is. Yeah.
What's the second part of the sentence, please?
You can never grasp how it cannot exist. You know, and there's a funny thing, because I know you said you can experience it, and you can have these things to experience, but you also need to plant some want to understand them. Just let me teach, please. Yeah? Please, thanks. Especially this topic. I know everybody is at a different level of experience and understanding, and I'm operating under certain assumptions. Yeah, thanks. So if we're going to go and figure out this thing that all Buddhists deny, this idea of self, self-existence and whatever, you really need to get a handle on what it could be. What would that look like if it did exist? So if that non-existent thing did exist in some way, this bloody thing we're talking about, what would it look like? What would it feel like? Because when you get close to it, you'll get the aha. Yep.
In ACI 1 we talked about dependent origination. Where does that come in?
It's coming. Beautiful. Yeah, it's coming. Beautiful. Dependent origination is what? There's two types of truths, right? We talked in ACI 1. Deceptive truth and ultimate truth. How are you experiencing every moment of every day according to ACI 1? Deceptive truth, which is another word for dependent origination. Things arise in dependence on, depending on the school. We talked about what that meant, right? Do things exist? Do they?
Not like we think.
Thank you. Well, yeah, excellent. Things exist. Deceptively, they exist. Yeah, I'm having a drink of whatever latte, and that works deceptively, and it functions. Okay? That is deceptive reality. Is it ultimate reality? Does it have ultimate reality? Yeah, thank you. Cool. So, the way that it operates with dependent origination it's coming. Yeah, back soon.
You'll give practical examples of the gotcha?
Sure. In a minute. What I want to say is that we are forever focused on the gotcha. Because of the experience we're having, we think things are self-existent. I can say the dependence origination of me having this liquid as a useful liquid, yeah, as a beautiful liquid, as a nice liquid that makes me feel happy and warm and whatever, is in dependence on something if I investigate it. But as I'm drinking, as a normal person walking around New York, I do not think of it that way. We don't even think dependent origination in our day-to-day experience. We think, I bought a tea out there separate from me that exists in and of itself from its own side as a good bloody cup of tea. I'm forced to think that, and then I have to change my mind under analysis, under study, under investigation. I have to think, why would it be that a tea can produce in me a sense of goodness or happiness or fulfillment, where the same tea with milk for a lactose intolerant person can send them into convulsions and vomit and whatever, but it's the same type of tea. It's the same type of milk. It's the same substance. This very same substance produces minimum infinite results depending on who's perceiving it. Yeah? That's how they really exist deceptively. Yeah? Because ultimately they exist differently, right? So deceptively, if they are dependent on these things that produce that result. That's what we learned in ACI 1. Gotcha is what in that case?
The fact that you think it's coming at you.
See,
It's the thing that's making you feel unpleasant.
there's something in us that tells us that thing is out there separate from me and you cannot escape it if you're in this realm. If you are who you seem to be.
So gotcha would be whatever object from the point of view of the deceptive truth. And we're trying to negate it to reach that ultimate truth.
Beautiful. Yeah, right. Excellent. From the point of view of dependent origination or deceptive truth, yeah, that we are forever experiencing. We don't even think deceptive truth. We don't even think that we're under the guise of a deceptive truth. We think this is truth. We're not even there. We're not even seeing dependent origination. We are living in the gacha. We are living in the world of things existing from their own side, separate from me. You are asking me a question separate from my experience of that question. I don't even think that. Dependent origination, depending on which school, which level of dependence. I don't even think that about your words entering my mind, producing an emotion, warranting a response. I do not think of that interaction as dependent origination. I think of that as the way it is. You out there, sounds that from their own side have meaning, yeah, entering my eardrum of their own side, me getting it and answering you, and by choosing these words I'm proving that I'm answering your question separate from mine. Does that? Yeah, we do that and live that all the time. So we live in the gacha. We live in this thing that if we investigate it for a little bit, we would understand could never exist that way. And that would lead us to then understand emptiness. Yeah? Because it's empty of that nature. That thing existing separate from me. That self. Yeah? Things and beings have a self. That self or self-nature is that thing we described. Any quality from its own side, separate from me or you. Yeah? Because if it had a nature like that, then your words saying, Hector, what's that mean, would be understandable to every single being, including ants, Chinese people, Australians.
And they won't understand the exact same thing.
They must, if that
if
thing,
it exists from its own side.
if the words, do you understand, from their own side had that power, everything that they landed upon must get that same experience. And they don't. If milk from its own side was nutritious and good, because it's got stuff in it emanating from it that produced the warm fuzzy feeling that I have when I have it, it must produce exactly that thing because it's got the power to produce that result. It must produce it when I pour it on the cement. The cement must feel the same fuzzy feeling. That way of existing is the way we think things exist. We habituate ourselves to think that way. We've always thought that way. We teach our children that.
So when we say, let's say, on a very superficial level, when we understand that you might have a different opinion about how beautiful something is or someone is, or I might not like somebody and you might like somebody and we agree to disagree, then we kind of understand.
Sorry, agree to disagree?
Yeah, we're
okay.
like, okay, we just had a different experience with this person.
Mm-hmm.
So are we kind of, attacking, like you're trying
It depends how you think about it. I know when I do that to someone, if you're subtle about it, I dismiss that person also. We do this all the time. You have a fight, so let's put it to application, okay? This understanding of the gacha. Let's do it with somebody distasteful, someone I dislike. And so I find somebody I dislike. My emotion here is I dislike that being. And then I instantly go to you and say, aren't they terrible? Because I need to, somehow in me, I need to get more proof, right? Because that's another story. But you say, no, they're lovely. Yeah, they're lovely. I know what I do in that situation is I go, she's crazy. Right? Like there's something wrong with her. But because I want to be friendly with you, I lie to you. Okay? And I go, oh, okay, no, but what about when, he stole all my money? And you'll go, oh no, I think it was a misperception. He thought you'd lent them the money, or whatever the story is that you have that is very different to mine, that rationalizes your idea, rationalizes mine. But I begin to dismiss that person in my mind. That's what I do. I try to understand it for a little bit, and then I go, oh, yeah, my reality is true. They're shitty from their own side. I'm angry, it came from them. I mean, that's how I experience the world. And so when I do come to those disconnects, we are like mice, or we are like We get distracted quickly. Go
What
on.
about Hitler? A lot of people.
Let's talk Hitler.
What if you're all feel like most people have the same opinion about someone?
He didn't have the same opinion about himself.
Huh?
He didn't have that same opinion about himself.
I know, but
Yeah.
if it's like, does it?
It's not about opinions. You see, it's not. Everyone is having their own perception.
Because when you say that, like this can be tasted to me and not tasted to you, and therefore it doesn't have, you're just saying that that's your opinion, that's your taste, and that's mine. You know what I'm saying? Like you're putting it as the whole nature just by the fact that you have different opinion about something. Therefore,
I'm not saying it's an opinion. I'm saying it's forced upon you. It's forced upon you. You cannot help but have that response to that thing, and it could be an angry. I mean, I'm simplifying. It could be an angry boss. We talked about objects like, is this a flower, or if something else walked past, is it food? Like a giraffe will see this as food. I'll see it as a flower. What I'm saying is that.
But there's no way somebody can be a little shittier than somebody else. You know what I mean?
Well, for you, it can be.
Yeah.
For you, it can be. But how come the rest of the world doesn't agree?
What if most of the world agrees?
What if most of the world agrees? What if everybody in the world agreed, and then you bring another world into it? What if everybody in the world agreed, and then a creature doesn't agree? Does that creature not have a perception of that same thing? So an insect crawling on this has a completely different experience of this thing than we do, and we think ours is right or it supersedes it or whatever. But for that mind stream, for that creature, whether it be a giraffe eating it, whether it be something, a cat smelling it, whether it's a completely different thing. If it's a bat, it doesn't even see it. Which perception is correct? Which rose is correct? Does the rose contain both those things? Is it only a rose? Is it only a sonar for the bat? Is it only a food for the caterpillar? Is it only an interesting thing for the cat? If it was something from here, it must produce the same experience because it's coming from here. And so the fact that everything that interacts with this thing has a different experience. And sure, you can find 20 people to agree with you. That's what we do all the time. We say, isn't my boss shitty? And then if you don't say yes, I quickly go to someone else. But it's true. I go to someone else until they agree with me, so I don't feel the discomfort. Let me finish. So I don't feel the discomfort of my perception being wrong, because there's some fear, some innate understanding already that there's something not quite right about how reality is expressed for us. I think in some level we have that understanding, and because it's shaky, maybe it's right 90% of the time, maybe it's right 30% of the time, maybe it's right 99.9% of the time. Let's take Hitler for example. 99.9% of the people agree he was a shitty person. Yeah? But that 1%, that 1% means something is not complete in my understanding of this object. There's something not complete in my understanding of this thing, of that Hitler. If a bat cannot see this, and it has a valid perception of this, and it cannot see it like this, and it cannot experience it like this, then this has more than this to it. Yeah? Gacha is something that happens in us when we have an experience of things that believes deeply and acts towards that as if it was just that. What we experience. By its own side, from its own side. It is just this. Out there, separate to me. So, another way to think about the gut chak in a practical sense, and we talked about the snake and the chicken in the center of the wheel of life, this ignorant liking and ignorant disliking. Any time that you have a negative emotion, it can be about a good thing as well, by the way, a negative emotion. Every time you want something unreasonably, or you dislike something because you don't understand it, it's a gacha. Yeah? Every time that you're having those experiences, you're dealing with a gacha. The fact that reality is appearing to you in a certain way, and you are filled with anger towards someone, or deep, stupid desire towards someone or something, wishing they were a certain way when they weren't, or wishing they weren't a certain way when they were, means that you're not dealing with what it is. Just at a very mundane level, you're dealing with a gacha. As soon as you've got a negative emotion rising, you're guaranteed you're dealing with a gacha. You're dealing with a thing that cannot exist that way anyway. You're actually having a negative emotion towards something that isn't even there.
And that becomes part of your life. Those are the gifts for your spiritual growth, right? Because once you start recognizing that, you can work with it.
Yeah, but you have to recognize it. Now it can turn into that if you understand the gacha, because then you can turn it from a negative to a positive. Yeah.
Why is it that the presence of the negative emotion has to mean that you're perceiving it the wrong way? Because to elaborate, like, if you understand where it's really coming from, but you're forced to see it come upon you later on, and it impacts you in a way that makes you angry, why does that anger state that you're interacting with it the wrong way? Because
you might, okay, I think I understand. You're saying just because anger arises, and by negative emotion I just didn't mean anger, by the way.
Okay, yeah,
I mean any of the spectrum of the base 2, which is ignorant desire or ignorant liking. If you have anger towards something and you see it as a karma ripening because you've got some understanding, then you must know you're not experiencing it correctly. If you're angry towards it, because it out there, separate from you, is not what it should have been or could have been or what it could have done or what it did do. What if you're angry at the fact that of what caused it in that sense, but your anger is arising because of what caused it? Here's my general answer for that. The only anger that's worth being angry about, the only anger that you should have in your mind, if you understand the gacha, is intelligent regret. You can never be angry at yourself for making the wrong decision. You can have intelligent regret, but as soon as you're angry, you're assuming that you could have self-existently had fixed it.
And you're planting a seed to be angry again, right?
You're looking at it as a self-existent thing.
You are planting the seed, but if we step back for a second, like, nothing is just the way it is.
No, it's the way what he just said. It's just the way, you have to.
Ask your question.
Maybe after class.
Cool.
So, I have a question.
Yep.
Gachas are self-existent things, but like there are supposed to be no self-existent things, supposed to be, basically. So gachas don't exist; they're an illusion.
Gacha never existed at all. Yeah, there's no such thing. A gacha is something that could never exist.
Right. So it's a
thing existing from its own. It's a term referring to an object we deny. Yeah. Gacha, object we deny, which means the way that things appear to us, we think are a certain way. They could never be that way.
Right.
Never. Impossible.
Okay.
Let me just clarify. Gacha. Emptiness is the absence of a gacha. Emptiness is there is no self-existent thing.
Okay, is there matter and energy?
Hold on. And then gacha is the opposite of dependent origination. Gacha appears in the opposite way to the way that things really come about.
They're
which
only
is
existing in
dependent.
your mind, right?
Hmm?
It's all happening in your mind.
I'm here.
But the experience of gotcha is happening.
Yeah, we don't cognize dependent origination properly. We don't realize that in order, I'll do, this is how things around you appear, which is law, man, etc. Maybe we'll cover that first, which will give us some insight into these questions, okay? And maybe we'll do it in 10 minutes or 5 minutes after the break. Let's do that. I listened to Geshe Michael's original class of this, and I was really annoyed. I listened to it 3 times, yeah? So I knew that we would be covering material, because A, I want to cover everything that was covered back then. B, I want to cover things that are practical, so I want to add some more. And C, I don't want you to think and sit here and go, I got it. I really don't. I want you to step into a space where you are struggling to understand this thing. Because if you are struggling to understand this thing, you will begin to come to realize, hopefully, that it's the gotcha that you're dealing with that is forcing you to have these kind of questions. It's like, hold on, but there's got to be a self-existent ignorance. Hold on, there's got to be a self-existent self-perception about the way I could have planted that karma. Hold on, there's got to be a self-existent perception around X or Y or Z. The frustration that at least my experience of the frustration I felt when I was listening to those original recordings was I had a gotcha about what the hell was supposed to a gotcha be. Yeah? Sorry to get double wow. So have a 10-minute break. We'll be back at exactly 9:10 because I've got some material to cover. Still not even halfway through. And just think about it. Like really think about the essence of your questions. It's a good space that your brain is in, okay? It's this tension. I need it to be there.